values of prefixes, multiple selections, and group of fields. Now, we already mentioned that when we go to the table panel ID, we cannot find all the information of the panel of a certain process. So we're going to have to do a few additional things. First of all, let's say we want to look for a prefix. Now, we know that we cannot find the values of the prefix in the table panel ID. So there's a workaround in order to achieve this information. The first thing we're going to do is enter a table that's called Enlaces. And once we enter this table, this is what we're going to find. We're going to find a column with an ID, and this contains a unique ID, a unique number for each prefix field or family element in a certain table. So we're also going to have here another column that's called ID tipo enlace that contains the specific ID of the prefix field or family element field related with a specific table, for example, with panel ID 29. So we can use it, among other things, for filtering the process data. This ID is obtained from AP Campos Tabla. This is the table we just saw. Remember, we saw this table and it contains all the fields that we have in a certain panel. And besides, there's a unique ID for that. So we can use that unique ID in order to filter the information. Now, here we're also going to see the name of the element that has been selected in that prefix field. So in order to do this, we're just going to follow a few steps. The first thing we're going to do is enter the table AP Enlaces. And once we're here, we're not going to want to see all the different prefixes. We only want to see the values of the prefix in relation with one unique panel, with one unique process. So here we're going to filter. We can see we've indicated where ID tipo enlace is equal to 581. So this ID is obtained from Campos Tabla. In this table, we're going to see the IDs of this prefix or this field in relation to the table where it's being used in. Okay, so I'm going to enter and I'm going to show this to you guys again. So I'm in Campos Tabla, and the first thing I did is I filtered with panel 29. I am actually showing not only panel 29, but I'm also showing some other panels. But anyways, I'm going to take this off so we can view only panel 29. And here we can see there's all kinds of fields, and there's also prefix fields. For example, there's one that's called model, another one that's called make. So there's all kinds of different fields. Here there's a prefix that's called account. And the relation that this prefix field has with the panel 29, it's got an ID here, 2808. Okay, so basically what we're seeing here is this. First we've gone to Campos Tabla. We've looked for the prefix we're interested in, and in relation with a certain process. Okay, the class of process with the ID, in my case 29, but here in this example, ID number 5. And then we have to take notice of this ID, for example, 581. This way, when we go to AP Enlaces, this is the other table I'm going to show you guys now. I can always filter, and I can say I don't want to see all the prefix values, only the prefix values with this ID, where we have the relation between the prefix and this panel. So that's what we're going to do. I have this ID, 2808, so I'm going to filter. Okay, so here I can see all the different values that have been selected in all kinds of different prefixes. I don't want to see all of this. I only want to see some of them that are related to a certain process. So I'm going to add a filter here. This would be the ID that I extracted from here. Okay, so I know the relation between the prefix account and panel 29 is this ID here. I can use it to filter the information. And when I click on execute, here we can see it showing me I actually have only one value in one process selected, and it's the value Toyota. So Toyota has been selected in relation to the class of process with the ID 29. We can see it here. I filtered previously to obtain this number. And this belongs to a certain process, and we can see the process over here where it says IDE elemento origen. It would be 12446. So I can always go and search for this information. For example, I'm going to go to tables. Okay, so here I have all the different processes that have been launched. And I want to filter. So I'm going to filter by the ID 12446. Yes, 12446. So, and here we can see the result. So by filtering by the ID 12446, I can see this is the instance of the process. It's got the reference 2911. So over here, I can see the value in that instance in the prefix is Toyota. I'm going to make sure. So I'm going to reports, and I'm going to open the instance number 1 and make sure that the value in the prefix is Toyota. Okay, here we can see the value. Now, if I go to the other ones, they might have a different value or they might be empty. So in this case, since the prefix has no value, it's actually not appearing in the tables. Okay, so we already know how to find the value of a prefix, but now let's say we want to look for the value of a group of fields, because here in this class of process, we're also using a group of fields. This one here, it's called meetings. And it's got several columns. We can even see it's got a group of fields inside of the group of fields. So let's see how we can identify this information in the tables. The first thing we have to do is go to Campos Tabla. We're going to filter by the panel of our class of process, in this case panel 29. And over here we're going to see all the list of terms. We can see one here, it's called meetings, and here we can see the ID it has in relation with panel 29. Okay. Now it's 2,814. This number is very important because when I go and I search for panel, let me filter here. We have to remember it's 2,814. We're going to see panel 29, but we're also going to see one that says 29, 2,000. Wait, this one's 800. Yes, 814. Okay. So this would be it. This would be the panel that contains the information of the class of process 29. Okay. And this would be the ID of the group of fields. So I know if I open this one here, I'm going to find all the different rows of this group of fields. There's actually only 2. So here I can see that in all the processes that were launched of this class of process, there's only 2 lines with data. And here I can also see another one that has another ID. Most probably this is going to be the ID of the affiliated group of fields that's within the parent group of fields. This is something that we can already know because the only other option it would be that this ID is a multiple selection field within the group of fields. But we know we don't have any. So this is going to be the table that contains all the affiliated lines of these lines here. Okay, so here I've got these 2 lines and we've got all these values. We've got a suffix here. We've got a general field here and so on. Okay, here we could also filter by the process where these lines were created. The information we need in order to know in what process, in what instance of the class of process these lines were created would be this value here, element ID. So let's say I go and I search for the table where all the processes are displayed. I think I have it somewhere over here. Yes, here it is. I'm going to take this off. So I'll filter where the reference is 29.1. And here I can see there's 3 processes that have been launched. Okay, we can see each one of these has a specific ID here. So each one of these 3 processes has a specific ID, 12446, 12447, 12448. This is probably the first instance that was ever launched, 12446. So if I go back to this table, okay, I mentioned it was an element ID. It's not correct. It would be here, register creation process ID. So we can see that actually both of these lines have the same ID, 12446. This means that both of these lines have been created in this process here, 2911. So here I have the lines of the group of fields. If I go to this class of process, number 1, I'll find both of these lines. So we can see them here, both of them. If we go to the other processes, we probably won't really find anything. There's not going to be any lines. So here we can see there's no lines. And if I go to the other one, okay, that's correct. We can see there's no lines either. So we already know how to identify the values of the prefixes, the values of a group of fields, and we also know how to find the values of an affiliated group of fields or a multiple selection field, because the process is actually exactly the same. The only difference is that first we're going to have the value of the panel of the process, then we're going to have the value of the group of fields or the multiple selection field. And after that, we might have another time the ID of the affiliated group of fields or a multiple selection field. Okay, so we can find it. We can find all of those, all of that information by searching in these different tables that have panel ID or panel ID, and so on.